Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. And in this video, I'm going to introduce you some introduction about the lighting in Maya. So in today's session, I'm going to cover all the basic things about the lighting. That what are the different type of light and what you can do with this lighting in Maya and how you achieve some realistic cinematic look in the Maya. So I'm going to cover Arnold as a rendering engines and by default lights that comes with the Maya itself. So if you can see in this scene, I have created the directional light that comes within the Maya. And directional light is something that can be used for the sunlight because it's called infinite light. So I mean, it doesn't matter where you placed, it will work in the same way. Okay, so if you can see the arrow is just showing the direction of the light. So right now I can say that it's coming from top to bottom. So it's always remember that you can always see the directions of the light. So arrow is always give you some overview that light from where the light is coming. So if you can see in the render, as like I said, the direction of the light is coming from left, from right corner to the left. And now if you can open the attribute of the light, if you can see some let's explore some of the values. So intensity is something that you can increase the light intensity, but we will not going to increase the intensity from the intensity, and we will cover most of the attribute under the Arnold tab. So just check the renders. And if you can see, we have multiple options. Illuminate by default means we need to specify that light, which object that you want to affect the light. So yeah. And so let's say uh, this I'm creating a new light, and for some reason shadow is not coming up. Let me check. Retro shadow is on. It's Yeah, so it's coming. So you need to update the remove the cache of the Arnold. So now selecting the light, and under the Arnold tab, just expand the Arnold tab. So most of the time we'll be working on this section. So yeah, just open the Arnold tab, and here there's multiple options that we're going to explore. So eventually we're not going to use intensity, but we are going to use exposure. So exposure is same just like intensity, and now if you can increase the exposure, we are like increasing the intensity of the light. So now if you can see the temperature. So temperature is something like that you can define by the value. So if you can do the Google with some color temperature value. So if you can see, the candlelight has some very oranging shades, and the moment if you start increasing the value of this number, you will get different colors. So for the sky, we usually start using from 6500 to 8 or 9000, and for candlelight 1500s, and bulb 20 to 500 to 3500. So this is the range that you can use if you want to use some colors in your light. But for the time being, we're not going to use this as a color temperature. And but yeah, I mean, definitely later I can use that. So now let's move to the other attributes called angle. So angle is something that if you want to blur the shadow. So currently, if you can see, if I'm increasing the angle, the shadow is getting blur and blur. So the more you use the value, the shadow is getting more blur and blur. All right. So this is very important. Like, suppose if you want to diffuse shadow, you need to change the angle value. Okay, so now I'm going to use some specific values like 5. So now if you can see, there's a lot of grains in the render. So the moment if you increase the sample, the render will be a bit more cleaner. So if you can see, compare the previous render, so by default it comes with the one sample. So one sample have a lot of grains. So I'm now, if you want to increase, you will get this nice cleaner render. All right. So the next thing is cast shadow. The cast shadow is something like, if you enable these things, your object is not going to generate any kind of shadow. So, I mean, definitely you need shadows. So it is better if you can, like, go with the default values. I mean, you really don't need to change any shadow density. And the next thing is visibility. So diffuse suggestion. So suppose if you put the value 0, so your light not going to affect anything. So make sure we can use some in some of the cases, but definitely I'll cover in more detail in the coming session. All right, so now we have a different type of light. So here we has a point light. So point light is nothing but just like a bulb light. So it's the point light will going to illuminate the light from all the directions. And this is the spotlight. This is also very important light. So spotlight is something like the name says, spot. So it's going to behave like some spotlight as well. So now if you can see in the renders how nicely it's giving some cone angle, some radius, some penumbra angle. So this will help you to increase the spotlight angle. So now if you can see the penumbra is just nothing but just if you want to blur the edges of the light. So it will work inside and the outside as well. So it's totally depend on you how much blur you want from the edges. And other than that, we have some other options like I can use some cone angle, penumbra angle, and drop off as well. RSS is very important, and let's move for some other light as well. So yeah, I mean you can do the same thing from the ordinal sections, and yes, we spend most of the time in the ordinal section only because we are going to use ordinal as my primary render engine. So now let's go back to the Arnold and say what are the different type of lights that we have under the Arnold. So let's come with the first light is called area light. So area light is nothing but just a normal rectangular kind of shapes. Now if you can see the arrow, so arrow is defining the direction of the light. All right, so now let's say I'm going to use open the attribute of the light and let's change the exposure value. So now if I increase the exposure, the light is getting more brighter and brighter. And now let's change the colors. So yeah, if you want to change the color, you can change it. You can do the same thing from the exposure as well. So it totally depends on you how you want to manipulate the light's color. And here we have some different kind of light shapes, quartz, disc, and but I'm to be very honest, you're going to use the same by default things. And now here is a spread like how much softer and how much angular you want from this light, just like a spotlight. So you can, although it's a rectangular light, but you can treat as a spotlight. So yeah, there's some other options that we have, soft edges and all these things. I wanted to explore all these options as well. The sample is the same things. If you want to get some cleaner render, you need to increase the sample. And the other thing is called camera. So here it is. So if you can see, we have the value 1. So we can see this the shape of the rectangular, but if you don't want to see the shape of the rectangular, you can just simply remove the camera value. And now let's play with some other attribute as well. So diffuse is nothing but if suppose if you want the light but you don't want that light should affect any of the objects, so you can just remove the diffuse value. So now I just connected this checker map in the light sections, and now if you can see, we have a different variation in the light. So now if you can see so the brighter is bright and black area is having very low number of light intensity. So let me show you with the color values, it will give you a good overview. So let's say I'm picking some red and blue. So now if you can see, I have two different kind of light illuminations. It's coming from like left and blue and right from the red. And now you can simply use any kind of textures if you want some different kind of light behaviors. All right, so now let's say I'm going to use sky dome. So sky dome is nothing but just the HDRI. So suppose if you want to use your light as from the 360-degree, so this is a very good light. The light will come in from all the directions. So I mean, yeah, dome lights is very important, especially for like any kind of lighting. So it has the same almost the same attribute that we have from the other light source. So but let's say I'm going to connect some of the HDRIs, because if you want to use some HDRI and if you want to get illuminated light from the HDRI, you can directly connect in the sky dome. So I'm going to download few HDRI. I think this is really good HDRI. I can see very hard sunlight, and if you can click on this image, it will give you some preview like how it's going to be in a render. So let's say I'm going to connect this SDRI. So there it is. Now if you can see the render, so I don't have any direction light, but still I can see some very sharp lines, sharp shadow from the sun, because the light is coming from the sun. and it's all the information is inbuilt in the HDRI. So if you want to rotate, you can just rotate it to change the direction of the light, and you can do all the steps. I mean, you don't need to create any direction right now. So yeah, if you can go with the camera value, you can't see the HDRI, but light is always going to react. And now let's go to some other light source as well. So let's say I'm creating different kind of object, and I see how nicely it's reacting with the light. And let's say I'm going to select this cylinder and just click on the mesh light, and now let's say increase the exposure value. So now this cylinder is going to behave like a mesh light. So I mean, suppose if you want to uh, create any different kind of shapes of the light, I mean, you don't need to be, let's just simply select the object and convert that object like a mesh light. Now let's come back to the different light. So this is the IES profile lights. This is very important. If you can see some of the light shapes is very I mean, you can't create in within the Maya, but this is just like a textures things, but it will going to work in a very realistic way. So I'm going to download some IES profile light, and let's say I'm creating, I mean, this is totally free. You don't need to pay anything. So I'm just going to download some of the IES profile, and let me extract that. Yeah, so now if you can see, I have a lot of IES file. So IES file will work only on the photometric light. So if I click on the photometric light, it's going to ask you some of the map. So this is called photometric files. So click here and load the IES file. So I'm going to pick any of the IES light, and again be increasing the exposure value. Now if you can see, the light is not the same way that we're using for the cube, or it has some different shapes. If it has a shape, so if you can see, if so suppose if you're going to any mall or stairs or the car headlight lamp, it has some kind of shapes, you know. So this kind of shapes is very difficult to make within the Maya. So in Maya we have this options called IES light. In IES light you can just, I mean, put this map, and your light is going to be a very different kind of shapes. So now if you can see the directions and the behaviors, it's totally, I mean, designer light, you can say that. Now if you can see how nicely it's coming. So now I'm going to duplicate it. See, I mean, it's very difficult to create in Maya, but in Arnold it has features to, I mean, use this kind of light. So yeah, I mean, you can do some other research, and and you can practice within these things. So this is again, let's come with the last one. This is AI physical sun and sky. So physical sun and sky is very important. So I mean, the physical sun and sky will comes with the sun as well as the sky. So now if you can see, the sky has its color just because we have the angle of the light. So uh, we have some very different attribute for the sky as well as the sun. So now let's say I'm going to play with some physical sky. So, and I'm going to play with the stability and elevations. So elevation is just a direction. So now if you can see, I have just elevation elevated down. So now the shadow is very long, and the color of the sky is also changing. See how saturated it is. So this is just